Welcome to Selling Sheet Music. I'm Garrett Breeze, and today we are taking the show on the road for the first time. I'm coming to you on location at the National Conference of the American Choral Directors Association in Cincinnati, and I'm here at the Hal Leonard Booth for a special episode we are calling The State of Choral Self-Publishing. Joining me is Luke Talen, the Creative Director for Choral Publications at Hal Leonard, Liz Groch, the Head of Growth for Sheet Music Plus, and Scott Harris, the Program Manager for ArrangeMe.com, who now has the distinction of being our show's first repeat guest.
Wow, I'm so honored.
So thank you for being here. Let's start by having the three of you just briefly introduce yourselves and give us both your musical background and what you do in your respective positions. So since I butchered your name, Liz, do you want to go first?
Ladies first. Yeah.
Sure. So I run marketing basically at Sheet Music Plus. I've been with the company about 4.5 years now, and I actually used to run the predecessor of ArrangeMe called S&P Press before we kind of moved over into a larger program with Scott at the helm. Prior to that, I worked for startups, and music-wise, I've been a singer now pretty much for 20 years, but primarily before that I was a pianist, but also violin, flute, so I've just been playing with music my whole life. Just
awesome.
All that good stuff. Hi, I'm Luke, Choral Creative Director, and I have been at Hal for 5 years, and growing up I just sang a lot of pop charts from our big Hal pop guys like Roger Emerson, Mac Hoff, Herbie Shaw, all those guys, and then my choir director in high school used to work at Hal. He was a music editor, a choral editor. I admired his skill and his knowledge, expertise, and when a job opened up 5 years ago, heck, I jumped at the chance. So, yeah, happy to be here.
And we had Roger on the podcast a couple weeks ago.
Yes, that's right.
So,
yes,
yeah.
What a mentor he is.
Yeah,
amazing guy.
That was a great interview. So everyone go listen to that. Scott, why don't you also give the spiel about ArrangeMe, just in case anyone listening is new to self-publishing and doesn't realize.
Sure. ArrangeMe is Hal Leonard's self-publishing program. It's a free platform to get your arrangements published through the Hal Leonard digital distribution channels, sheetmusicdirect.com, sheetmusicplus.com, and Noteflight. It's wonderful. Access to over 4 million copyrighted songs pre-cleared, so no permissions necessary. It's free to sign up. We've paid out over $5 million in commissions to arrangers and composers in the lifetime of the program. And it's that worldwide reach for your arrangements and compositions to get out there for people to find.
Okay, so Luke, I'll throw the first question to you. What do you think the perception of self-published music is within the choral community, and how do you feel that it's changing?
Well, I suppose the perception would be like, I'm a little teeny fish in a big pond, and how do I get noticed, and how do I promote myself, and how do I become something that people want to sing? And I think it's changing a lot recently with, the advent of self-promotion and social marketing, as well as what we've done here with ArrangeMe, which is make it 10,000 times easier for someone to take a copyrighted song and put their own spin on it. So I hope that the perception is changing to one of more accessible and more available for anyone to jump in at any point.
Yeah, I do think there is a perception, at least within the composer community, that choral directors are maybe a little bit hesitant to branch outside of the established names and the established, publishing companies.
Yep.
I don't know if you agree with that, or if there's any way to make yourself stand out as a composer. Part of the job is convincing people to give your music a chance.
Right. Yes. I mean, when I gave my intro about how I started, it was like, I talked about the Hal Leonard guys, right?
Yeah.
About the established names of gentlemen and women whose arrangements I had sung because they had been with Hal Leonard for millions of years. Well, not millions of years, but you get what I'm saying. It feels like they've been part of the system, so they're tried and true and trusted and been something like that. So there's a fair amount of taking a chance, but I think with the ArrangeMe platform, I think it just gives a voice to someone who has something to offer, and I don't think self-publishing is something you need to be scared of if you're going to program it. It's if you take a look at a piece of music and if you want to program it, you should go for it, and you should take advice of peers, and you should come to shows and see what people say and test the temperature.
Okay, so Liz, to put some context to all of this, I looked up on the S&P website on Monday, and it said out of the Well, it said there were 140,000 digital choral titles, and then out of that amount, there was about 66,000 that came from ArrangeMe users. So that kind of gives you a sense of how big the program's gotten. But on S&P, they're also competing against the print titles as well. And so what do you think a composer can do to get their music what do you think a composer can do to get their music noticed, especially original music that doesn't have a song attached to it that comes with its own sort of built-in popularity?
So that's a very big question.
We ask the big questions here.
Okay.
Just write amazing music all the time.
So if we're literally just talking about getting noticed, I think you have to think about it as a business, right? As if you're like a small business owner. So you have to have your music be in places that people are looking for music. You have to make it easy for them to get it, and you have to make it easier for them to figure out who you are. I think there's a huge appetite, to piggyback on what Luke was saying on the question you guys were talking about earlier, huge appetite to discover new music, discover new perspectives. You just have to make it easy for the person to do that, because there are so many voices in the market. So if, selling through ArrangeMe basically means that you're already on a platform that allows you to sell. It allows you to be distributed to millions of customers around the world via Sheet Music Plus, via Sheet Music Direct. So you're taking care of that distribution aspect. The next question is, how do you get noticed amongst everybody, right? And, honestly, kind of think about who is your target market, who are you trying to sell to, and how do you get in front of them. So sometimes there are people who are building relationships directly with like parts of the choral community. There are people who are doing a lot of social media work. There are people who are literally just trying to be the first person on Sheet Music Plus to arrange Paint It Black for cello right after Wednesday comes out, and there's a little bit of, all of these things, right? And I think what ArrangeMe really does also is that by creating this pathway for people to kind of dip their toe in the water with a new arranger, a new voice, they're saying like, oh, you've arranged a piece, I know the song. Oh, I like this person's arrangement. Let me check out what else is in their catalog. Yeah. And that's a way to almost funnel customers into original compositions, is by getting to know you through your arrangements.
Do you think social media is the best way to market sheet music, or is there some other way? I mean, are you using Google ads? Are you going out to conventions and that sort of thing? Like, how would you rank your tools in order of effectiveness?
For Sheet Music Plus, or for a self-published publisher on Sheet Music Plus?
Well, are they different?
Yes.
Okay, could you go into that?
So we're a retailer, and as the retailer, our sort of place is to kind of scoop up demand a little bit that's already there. And so, yeah, we do a lot with Google Ads. That is our main kind of conduit, like our main marketing channel. But we also do a lot to kind of provoke demand via email, via social content, but really we're focused so strongly on the Google advertising machine. For the sort of composer, I think you think about it in the same way that Hal Leonard would think about it, or any of the other publishers here, where it's here's new music. How do I get it in front of people? How do I introduce them to a new concept? And I think that it's a question of kind of what are all of your potential avenues at your disposal, and what works the best for the music that you're selling to the audience that you're selling to. There are relationships built into that. I think social is a great tool to reach a larger audience than you necessarily have at your disposal. But I think I wouldn't isolate yourself to that. And I think there's a lot that can be done, individually by word of mouth and so forth as well.
When if I look at like Hal or Sheet Music Plus or a lot of the bigger publishing companies, if you just look at the follower counts, I see the YouTube accounts having tons of numbers, then Facebook, and then from there maybe Instagram, and then kind of Twitter at the bottom has 100 people. It doesn't really seem like there's a lot of sheet music moving on Twitter. Would you agree with that sort of ranking?
Yeah, because also, people are using YouTube also for a lot of these their play videos.
Yeah, our kids, our singers often reference YouTube. We started their YouTube program and it just turned into a teaching tool. Kids listen to it, or singers listen to it, to learn their parts. And
Oh,
that's
yeah.
going to be a big change in how we like do digital audio in the future. But we've really adjusted and been like, oh, this is really something that really gets the word out.
Was that a pandemic thing, or was that already happening?
That was already happening. I think the first video we uploaded was 2015. And it was kind of like, oh, we'll throw it up there on YouTube and see what happens.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it would get tons and tons of hits, and people would be like, oh, OMG, this was so great, because this helped me learn my part really well. Would you have another voicing you could put up? And then it just kind of snowballed into something gigantic. So.
And also, you know, as a director, right, if you're going and looking through a lot of different music, and especially if you want to branch out from, you know, the tried and true, both, you know, brands, composers, songs, all those things, right? The easiest way to do it is to listen to it while following along the score. And that's what those videos let you do, without any real hassle, without having to, you know, sort of sit at a piano and play it or find a choir to read through it. It's just, go to a conference. It's the easiest thing.
Oh yeah, and you self-direct yourself there. So it's like you listen to one thing, and then another thing that interests you.
Yeah.
And then another thing. And it snowballs.
That's why for ArrangeMe we say so often, like, the best thing you can do in terms of, you know, kind of your visibility on our platform really is getting those YouTube videos, because that audio, like that ability to kind of pair the audio with the previews, it's really kind of second to none.
Yeah. Yes, some kind of demonstration recording, even
Yeah.
if it's just a simple MIDI out. If that's all you can do, great. You know, it's better than nothing.
Yep.
That's true.
'Cause we all know that music sells better when there's an audio demonstration attached with it. You know, just by and large. You know, so you got to give people a taste of it. You know.
Yeah. One thing I really enjoy about those ArrangeMe emails
Yeah.
are like the call to the action that they all have.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's this song, and
Hint,
no
hint.
no one's made an arrangement of this.
100%,
Like, go
yeah.
for it, and it feels like I read it, and I'm like, oh, I could be the one to
Yes,
do that. Like,
yeah,
I could
absolutely.
really be arranging this and flexing my creative juices.
Yeah, we're just inviting people to
it's a
step
good
into
way.
that.
Yeah.
And some people aren't interested, and that's fine too. You know, you do you and stay in your lane, but you know, we're providing opportunity and valuable information for people to act on, exactly like you just described, Luke. That's great.
Which also helps you be the first person to have done that on
Yeah.
Sheet Music Plus or Sheet Music Direct, and then if somebody kind of is looking for that song, then you're the one that they are discovering.
Yep. I mean, long story short is like, as we were all musicians at one point, there's a certain grind to it, you know? Like, it's our
Making
side
YouTube
hustle.
videos is
Yes.
definitely a grind.
Sure.
Right, exactly. But you know, creating, and any creator will tell you that you put in the work, but then ArrangeMe is like this tool
Yeah.
that just makes it comfortable and easy to just
Yeah.
get your word out there. So
Well, and I'll say this, like, you're already an arranger, a composer, you're already grinding, right? Like you said, you're doing the work because you love it, you're passionate about it. Go that one extra step to make sure you've got a good audio demonstration to really maximize the potential to get it in front of people. It's just you treat it as part of your process, you know, every time.
So what about these interactive scores? Do you think those are those the future? Are those going to be more prevalent, or does that exist to serve a specific type of choir?
Luke, do you have thoughts on that?
well, Liz, talk about your voice part and how that
So
Hal Leonard has nothing to offer for your vocal range.
Yes.
You really don't. As you may have noticed, I am the alto of altos, and all those things that are sort of recentered on the staff, all those pop songs, I can't sing those. I would love there to be more interactive music, especially for solo vocal. You know, and even the choral, you know, is written, it's always generally written differently, so it's a different situation. But, you know, if you want to be able to do that for choral, especially if there's like accompaniment, I would love to see more of that. On the a cappella, it's a lot less of a problem, right? Because you can just say, we're going to move this, you know, half a step
up
or
or
a step.
down,
Yeah, it's not a big deal. But I would love to see more of it. Is it going to happen? I mean, I think that that's just a question, you know, really just people using the tools, right?
Well, and that's what
so-
Noteflight's for, isn't
Yeah, I
it?
was going to say, Noteflight is really the tool to do that through ArrangeMe right now. It's a great program. The notation editor built into the service is really quite wonderful. It does take some getting used to, but once you do, it's the just fastest way. And you can import a music XML file from your Finale or Sibelius right in there, clean it up a little bit, get used to it, and you can publish it. And you're publishing interactive files just like any Hal Leonard produced piano vocal that's published of any pop tune that they do. Those are all interactive as well. And so you're raising your bar to meet that standard. Choral, I agree, it's a bit of a mixed bag because like nobody's going to want to take down a choral tune like a sixth, or a fifth.
Right.
It's tough to, voice leading all the things.
It's more of a business decision.
Exactly, yeah. So in that case, I would
key.
arrange it and then upload it as a second option or third option. Those different high, low, medium voices. That's how I would.
Are there people that are doing both, like ArrangeMe and Noteflight, putting the same chart up?
We recommend not doing it. It doesn't make sense because when you publish through Noteflight, it publishes through ArrangeMe. So it goes to Sheet Music Direct, Sheet Music Plus, and it also goes to Noteflight Market. Well, the Noteflight, the retailer that you can purchase through Noteflight in and of itself. So if you then uploaded a PDF of the same chart through ArrangeMe, you have two charts in the system of the exact same thing. One's interactive, one's a PDF locked down. So.
Yep.
But if you want to do one interactive and then a couple different voicings, I guess you could do that. But yeah, I would recommend for choral a couple, 3 different voicings locked down in PDF, or just do the interactive version where people can pick.
So I've tried a lot of different things in marketing my own music, and I've noticed that choral music in particular seems to be pretty set in its ways. People buy music when they buy music, they buy what they're looking for, and they don't really seem to be moved by like 25% off this week, or like buy one, get one free, or sort of the traditional sales gimmicks, for lack of a better term, that you see from other companies. If you're selling t-shirts, there's all kinds of things, use this coupon code here or whatever. Are there certain things like that, special events that you have found, any of you, have you found any of those sorts of things to be effective in marketing and getting people interested in music that they might not otherwise have been?
I think that when it comes to, I think that we use discounts a little bit less to highlight, a new composer or a new type of music, and more to kind of attract customers away from other retailers, frankly. Like, it's less about, kind of what's in our catalog and more about kind of competing for those orders. Because as you said, people are buying at certain times of the year. I want to kind of make sure they're buying with us. Whether they're buying Garrett Breeze or Scott Harris or Hal Leonard or, they're not buying me. But whether they're buying, whoever's work, I think that's it's less a question of price and of and any discounts provided, and it's more a question of, have they heard of it? Is this what they're looking for? Does it suit their needs? So what any sort of discounting would do really is that you're calling attention to yourself and to your product. And I would focus less on the price component and more on the look at me component, and educating people about, kind of who you are and what makes you special. And kind of getting them just interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting question from you, Garrett, because like the Hal Leonard publishing catalog, the stuff that we put out in print and now digital copies, it's very seasonally focused, right? Yeah. So we base it on like the Easter Lent season for Sacred, Fall Christmas, and then for the school, we base it on the school year, right? So we've got a big catalog that comes out in May, or Spectrum, and then it's like you buy your music for the year, and that's just kind of how it works. And then there's a mid-year promotion where we'll take things in, sort of in the holiday season and promote spring choir things for graduation and, uplifting things for the end of the school year. But attaching discounts and things to a schedule that isn't aligned to, what we've been doing for 30 years is probably a really good thing that we should look at, because saying that we've done this for 30 years, that's never a good statement for anything. So I think, it's just a really interesting point to raise when it comes to that kind of promotion and discounts, because we've been doing it the same way for a while, but perhaps there's something we could do better.
So I'm curious on one thing, since you brought up the publishing cycles. The conventional wisdom, like you said, is, for example, Christmas music, you would want that published, over the summer, because that's when people are getting ready for the Christmas season. But I've noticed that I sell the most Christmas music in October and November. And maybe I just attract the last minute crowd, but I'm wondering if you think self-published sheet music is serving maybe a different corner of the choral market that maybe wouldn't be going to Hal Leonard in the
The
summer.
last-minute procrastinator market?
I don't know. I mean, are we
No.
talking about the same, like, am I competing with you for the same people, or is it maybe a different set of choral musician that's looking at self-published music?
That's another really good question, because a lot of our timing had to do with how we would furnish music to dealers, like brick and mortar dealers and that kind of thing. So we would always be ahead of the game on that kind of thing. But self-publishing, I feel like just by its nature is much more immediate.
Yeah.
Like you can, create and get it out there immediately. And I know that's one thing in print we have to get better at, but that'll come in time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's a difference in immediacy between the two as well. And they probably reach, different levels of buyers at different points in their careers, different points in their lives. And yeah, that's probably a gap we need to analyze.
Well, speaking of print, do you think everything's going to go to iPads?
Not yet. Not completely. I mean, we've seen a change.
No,
Yeah,
I
Liz,
wanted,
you wanna jump in on that one?
not on that one. I want to talk about the seasonality thing actually a little bit. I also think there's a question of like literally your delivery method, right? Like if people who are buying print for Christmas probably have to buy it earlier. If you're talking about selling your digital titles, like these are people who potentially waited a little bit longer and they need something immediately to download today to fill in a gap or whatever, like fill out a new program that they didn't know about. And so I think that also, they don't have time to buy the print anymore. So I think that also helps. It also really might be a question of the choir and the sort of part of the choral market that you are serving, like your particular music. We also find that the people who are buying a lot of times in like a July or something for Christmas, a lot of times these are either directors that are just really ahead of the curve, or they're dealing with choirs that are maybe need a lot more time to rehearse. And so if you're writing things that are at a higher level or to specific sorts of choirs, they might be able to kind of buy them closer to a performance date.
Yes. And it's like, by waiting and purchasing later or earlier, like the product is still the same.
Yeah.
Because you're buying good music and
Yeah.
you're buying good arrangements. It's not like when you pick teams on a playground like the last kids love.
Yeah,
Sorry to
yeah.
use an outdated reference, but like, when you're waiting, you're not losing anything by that. You're
Yeah.
still buying good music and good arrangements that are just out at a different time.
Yeah.
So
I will also say that one of the things we've been noticing, it's kind of getting more regular and normalized now, but like, during COVID, what we were seeing is that a lot of Christmas buying was actually delayed because, people were, I think directors were like, is my choir back? What
Yeah.
do my numbers look like? What's the level that I'm looking at? Like, what can I accomplish? And so things that were, where we would see sales happening in maybe in August or September, were moving back to October, November, because they were trying to answer those questions throughout that period as well. So I think that's also part of what we've been seeing.
This may be related. I also think it has a little bit to do with the voicing of your chart. It might be a little bit different, a little out of the norm of what Hal or other publishers offer, and so different voicing types, that are maybe less traditional, could explain some of that too. And that's where ArrangeMe self-publishing tends to fill the holes of the market, and that's where you're going to be a little more successful if you kind of find your niche.
yeah.
And
or difficulty level.
yeah, fair,
Like,
yeah.
Say
Yeah.
you want a really custom arrangement of something that's
Exactly.
really Devisy, and
Yeah,
if we were
yeah.
at the school catalog, we'd be like, oh, no way we could sell that
Right.
and get a
Right.
bunch of copies.
But there's a market for that,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just worth mentioning that there's a large market and there's a lot of needs to fill, and Hal Leonard Choral, fills a good part of it very well and very specifically. But there are other things that just don't make sense for big publishers to publish, and so that's where a self-publisher, if you kind of tap into aligning your gifting with the hole in that market, you can really do fairly well, I would think. Yeah.
Although Hal Leonard sort of is doing that, because by going all in on the ArrangeMe thing, they're basically backing all of these self-published composers. I mean, essentially they're backing their competition in a lot of ways, at least with certain catalogs, at least certainly the pop choral, the arrangements. I'm wondering if you see it that way.
I definitely don't see it that way at all. And the biggest reason is just because of the amount of music and talent in the world. Like,
Yeah.
the arrangements that we put out are great, but they're not the only arrangements in the world. There are amazing people in the world with things to offer. And we've done our due diligence over the years and gotten these great copyrights through our relationship building, and that's how Hal Leonard was built. But it's time to share that because lots of people have other things to say, and holding it onto us, or holding tightly onto it like that, isn't beneficial anymore in this day and age. So I don't view it as competition like that in any sense of the word.
This self-publishing program is, at this point, about 11 years old. The copyright sort of portion of it, I think started in 2016, if I'm correct. So that's 7. And then we brought on choral in 2018. This has mostly been a market expansion activity, meaning it's a market that just wasn't served, or it was served in this very, hand-to-hand, not broad way, and frankly, probably not legal, and not really kind of, giving the copyright holders, their due as well. And so this has, largely been really just an expansion of the sheet music market in that time, and it's allowing, those voices to be there. So it's really not competing against Hal Leonard in a lot of respects. It's adding to what Hal Leonard can do.
Yeah, when you just said it, Liz, it's giving people a voice to be heard that didn't maybe necessarily have that opportunity. Guys like you, and people that deserve to be distributed on a wider basis.
Well, and I also think one of the challenges for composers is educating the choral market about all of those different options that are out there. Because there are more places to buy music now. There's more pricing models. There's more voicings, and just a lot. It's the market's flooded, right? And so being clear in telling and communicating where your music can be found and how you can find it, I think is a hard thing to do. And I think maybe part of that has to do with the way you decide where to put your music. I get the impression that Sheet Music Plus serves a different market than J.W. Pepper versus Sheet Music Direct. Otherwise Hal Leonard wouldn't put it on all those other sites. Because most of your titles are on the Hal Leonard site, but then they're also you can get them from Pepper. There's a number of different distributors.
Right.
And so is that just because each of these companies or each of these distributors has a specific set of people? Or is it just blanketing the field and seeing what sticks?
Honestly, it's been a natural evolution of when we started digitizing choral for the first. I can speak to the Hal Leonard portion of it, where it's when we started digitizing chorals, which actually wasn't that long ago, it's only 2015 or 16 or something. We would open up those channels with our closest brick and mortar dealers, so they could get the assets quicker and get those digital copies. And then Sheet Music Direct became our furnishing place for all those digital chorals that just go straight out of Hal Leonard and go there. So for us, it's just been a natural evolution of the relationships that we have with the dealers, just bringing it into the digital age. And since we acquired Sheet Music Direct and used that, that's where all of our digital choral on the Hal Leonard side just got furnished that way.
What's happening to the physical brick and mortar distributors? Is that still a thing?
It's still a thing. There's lots of consolidation in the world, of course. There's less stores, and you've seen it everywhere. Closing Kmart's and Sears all over, and music business is no different. But digital commerce, in terms of how that music is promoted and sold, there's fewer.
But I get the sense physical print still dominating digital in terms of sales.
Yes, in terms of sales, oh man, I don't know what the number is, the percentage. I could throw some wild stat over there, but the print, it hasn't gone away like maybe you would expect in pandemic, and then print dies immediately. But it just has not been like that. There's absolutely a market for print music because it lives on in perpetuity. There's large print editions that people can read, and there's something about that tangible holding that music in your hand that just, it's not going away overnight at all.
All right, so here's a super nerdy choral specific question, but the standard for choral prints, obviously that smaller octavo size, but most of the digital print titles are PDFs, and those are typically being printed by regular people on regular computers. And so I think the standard for digital publishing, correct me if I'm wrong, is still that 8.5 by 11 page size. So if a composer is publishing digital only, are there things you recommend that they do differently because they're working with a page size that's different than the typical norm. I mean, you've got everything dialed in terms of font size and spacing and all that stuff, but there's a lot more room on the page when you're going 8.5 by 11.
Right. I might get really nerdy here, but I think whenever we export any of our music, it's all vector-based, so it's all percentage-wise, so you can blow it up to whatever size you need to, and it will print at the same resolution. So when we give large print editions to a retailer like J.W. Pepper, they just take our PDFs and blow it up and print it on 8.5 by 11. Since 8.5 by 11 is the standard in US, we pretty much have to, I mean, when we export it, it can be whatever size it wants. What do people have at home? A printer that prints 8.5 by 11, or maybe 11 by 17 if they got like a tabloid or a poster side printer.
I mean, or if you go to Office Depot or something.
Yeah, right. I mean, as far as the music coming out from Hal ourselves, it's all PDF vectors, so they can blow it up or shrink it down to whatever they need at that point. I just know that most people have those 8.5 by 11.
Is that something normal people can do? Like blowing up their PDFs and changing size? Is that just like an Adobe feature, or is it some like more complicated process?
You know, as someone who's been in the tech, you know, and growing up in the early 2000s, I'm like, oh yeah, I can blow up a PDF, no problem. If I were to give that to my dad, he would be like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
How do I do this? So
I'm not naming names, but I'm just asking the question.
Making it easier, you know, might be something we should look at, you know, making music.
Sure.
Yeah, we definitely got questions in on the tech side into our customer service about things like that. So please do.
All right, here's a listener question that's on the tech side. Why is it, so I'm just going to read what they said. I would like to know why the search engines for sites like S&P seem to hide our work so far down the search results. And I think what they're referring to is when you type in the exact title of a song, it's not showing up. Like that exact title match isn't the thing that pops up first. There's maybe a bunch of other products or close matches, and then the ArrangeMe stuff kind of comes in at the bottom of the page, generally speaking. So I guess could you maybe talk through like what those search engines on S&P are looking for, and what kind of things composers need to do to help their arrangements reach the top of the list?
It's a sales ranking algorithm. So what actually goes into that is proprietary, and honestly, I don't know the exact every little bit of it. But I mean, I do sort of, but the exact weightings and so forth, I of course I cannot give you. But basically, the best thing you can do is sell more often, sell more recently. Like that's what it is. There's a total sales. There's a recency of sale. That's the best thing you can do.
And then the keywords, is it drawing that from the product descriptions, or is it from the like tagging that's done when you upload a piece?
It's kind of all over the place.
Okay. I mean, obviously you should do both methods, but I was curious if one ranked higher than the other.
It's all over the place.
Yeah.
Search results are kind of like
I
this
can't
thing.
speak of search results. I honestly
Well, no,
can't.
and even our own writers come to me all the time, and they're like, I searched for something and hit search, and I couldn't find it. And it's because instead of typing out the word doctor, they did DR period or something.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of the search results depend on, I'm not going to say it's all user error, but search results, you use quotes to get words in a string that you want to do. You can use the word not to get rid of words that you don't want to search for. And so search results can be tricky for some people, but
Well, because I would say that's probably the biggest challenge that we as composers are up against, because I don't think a lot of people are searching for, self-published music or, arranged music. I think they're just getting on Google, they're getting on YouTube, and they're just searching, and so it's whatever comes up, and we're kind of at the mercy of all the algorithms here.
Yeah, I would love to know Google's algorithm too, because I'm at the mercy of it as well, right? And like our entire site is. So yeah, it's one thing after another. But that's why all these things, that's why I'm saying don't just rely on necessarily like
that algorithm.
on that algorithm, on any algorithm. And that's why I do think all these things where figuring out multiple channels to get your music in front of people, get choir directors to know you, get people to understand your product and want to buy your product. diversification is really your best friend. And that's why, kind of getting in front of people like we have people in the ArrangeMe program who really serve specific niches very well. And they sell over and over and over again to choirs of those sorts because they know those directors, and those directors are like, well, I know that this person is going to have an arrangement that's going to work for my choir because I know that they do things consistently very well in this sort of style or genre. Getting in front of them, sort of going to conferences, finding a lot of different avenues that we're not just at the behest of an algorithm.
Yeah, I would say control what you can control.
Yeah.
And don't worry necessarily about the stuff you can't. Do the very best work you can, promote it as best you can. Liz had a great, get to know choral directors, get your stuff out there as much as you possibly can, because, good work turns into more good work, and word will spread, whether that's digitally far and wide, or even in your local community as you ask a local choir to demo us something or whatever. Controlling what you can control goes a long way, I think. And instead of spinning your wheels on algorithms and SEO and metadata and all that stuff, do what you can there, absolutely, but there's a certain point where just focus on the work, and the cream rises to the top,
And also enter these competitions. There's a ton of these out there, and what happens is then somebody else will be like, well, I heard about somebody won a prize somewhere, or and that they also help to amplify like your name and your music. And I think that's another. You already have the product. You just need to enter it and submit it.
Yeah.
So. Do you see a difference between the success of composers who just kind of keep their head down and write music and upload it versus the ones that are like the content generation machines, and they're putting out posts and videos and like TikToks and all these different things for each of their arrangements? Like, do you see that really moving the needle?
So I'm going to say yes, but with a caveat. So again, like going back to this point of it's really helpful to have recordings and online assets so that people can, kind of get samples of your product and sort of pair that also with the sheet music itself, always a really good thing. Even if somebody has heard something in a concert or, something like that even if they know you, that's always just like, well, I went home and I checked this out, right? So I think that's no matter what you do. And so, yes, by that regard, 100%. Now, when it comes to does it have to be a social media play? No. Unlike, there are people who are doing excellent work in things like barbershop, in things like, the gala chorus arrangements, in church, who are not major content generation machines, but they've built relationships, they've done this sort of groundwork. Where they've found other channels. And so that while the content generation machine is an option, it's not the only one that you have at your disposal.
Yeah, and I'll say some of that is great and really good best practices, but it can turn into like just white noise if you're doing a thing after everything you put up there. It's like, okay, well, that's just another thing that this guy does one a week. And it's like, well, how is that different from the last one?
Well, then you can spend just as much time making your YouTube posts as you do actually writing the music.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, Deke Sharon, I've heard him say before, I don't like, he said this in the interview I did with him for ArrangeMe last year. He said, I don't do a social post about every new chart I come up with, but he's like, I pick my spots. I wait for the ones that I really feel good about, I really believe in, and like I make sure and post about those that really are priorities, just like any other publisher would, quite honestly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're a self-publisher. You almost have to think like a publisher, and you can't put the same level of promotion behind every single piece. It just doesn't work. Yeah, and you learn that kind of stuff as you go too. So, and obviously, it depends on how prolific you are, and if you write one chart a quarter or a year or something, you're going to want to tell everybody about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's relative, but yeah.
All right, Luke, I'd like your take on something. I kind of see this paradox in the advice I'm given, which is that if you want to sell a lot of music, you should write easy music. That's what people tell me. If you want to break into the choral market, you need to write, SAB, simple voicings, stuff that I've heard it described as just add water music.
Uh-huh.
You can open up a rehearsal. There's not really any pitfalls. It's straightforward.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the advice that I hear given. But then when I look at my music and what's gotten the most attention and what's sold the most, it's been some of my pieces that are the most complicated. So is that, going back to what we said before, is that because people that are shopping for self-published music are looking for stuff that's harder, or what's your take on that?
Well, you personally, I think it's because your music is so good that people go straight to the top. Absolutely.
Bonus points for Luke.
Every time. That's an interesting question, and ever since the pandemic happened, we've put a renewed focus on that so-called easy music, right? Unison, two-part, emerging choirs, SAB, because we hear it verbally that we want to demand for it, right? Because choirs had been away for a while, and they need to get back into it and do learning pieces and teaching pieces, and I think that's true to an extent. But then also, people are ready to go. They're ready to rumble, right? And I don't want to ignore that section of the marketplace as well. And if your more difficult music has sold, that could be who you're writing for, but it also could be that that's what those choirs are ready to do, and that's what they need. And maybe the unison and two-part stuff that we're pushing is going to be more towards, choirs that have been off for a while and choirs that need to really work on fundamentals. And there's going to be plenty of those as well. So there is a need for unison and two-part and just add water music, like you say, but there is also definitely a need for the more difficult, the more diverse, and the more challenging. Absolutely.
Do you think it's a question of deciding, like, I'm going to write hard music and that's going to be my thing, like that's going to be my brand? Do you think that matters? Or is it okay to have some pieces that are easy, some pieces that are hard?
I think that's totally up to you.
Yeah.
I don't think we have one specific writer where it's like, this person only writes easy music.
Or like level 6.
Exclusively.
Yeah.
Well, I just think, and maybe this is a better way of asking the question, but I think it's harder to make yourself stand out with easy music because you're not getting to show off, your cool part writing
pizzazz.
or your,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
It's a good point.
Doesn't mean, it forces you to be creative in different ways, but I do think it's not gonna go viral. If you write an easy piece for choir, it might sell like hotcakes, but people aren't gonna be like talking about it,
Yeah.
like they would with maybe an Eric Whitaker piece that's super hard and everybody wants to do it just because it sounds cool,
Right.
and they don't care that it's too hard for their choir. They just want to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think this is where your voice comes in. Like,
I would also argue that maybe the challenge is figuring out how to marry the two, right? Like, how do you write an easy piece that is unique somehow? And I feel like a lot of composers and arrangers who do very well in the broader market, like even outside of self-publishing, are people that are able to write something that is actually fairly accessible and make the choir that's singing it sound better than they are. And like maybe that's part of the challenge if you want to kind of tackle that broader market.
All right, let's make some predictions.
already.
Are we putting money on it?
You got it.
We'll meet back in 2 years at the next ACDA. We'll listen and we'll see how well we did.
It's on my calendar.
So, what are the styles or genres of choral music that you are seeing the most growth or change in? Where do you think the industry as a whole is going?
Heavy metal, for certain. No. Which genre is changing the most?
Or what are the trends? What should composers be aware of?
That's a good question. I would say conscious music is on the rise. Socially conscious music, diverse conscious music. There's always a need for that. I mean, everybody wants that now. It's just no one wants the message of doom and gloom, and sometimes that can get overwhelming with the positive messages. But there's a wealth of composition out there, and we're seeing sales numbers through the roof on that kind of music. Conscious music, SEL music, just music that enlivens and lifts your spirit. That's a big change that I've noticed recently.
Diversity overall. Diversity in terms of places in the world music's coming from, diversity of just voices. I think the other thing is that acapella continues to grow, guys.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
It's true.
as an overall genre. So, which is exciting.
Yeah.
Sure does.
You're an acapella guy. Where do you see this all going?
You know, I mean, you can't discount the just pop music, you know, cycles. You know, I mean, there's always going to be another pop tune that's really popular, and sometimes, as we saw with the Kate Bush tune, Running Up That Hill, like it might be a really old song that just catches fire because of a sync thing with Netflix or whatever. And so, the ability to jump on that train if you want to ride it, you know, is valuable. But also, it's okay if you don't. But I guess my point is, popular music. There's always been a place for it. And I think there always will be.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
And I'm glad
It's
you
gonna ebb
brought,
and flow.
and I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people have this perception that pop music is sort of off to the side, you
Yeah.
know, not of the same quality.
Yeah.
But where
I
do you,
disagree. Yeah.
Totally disagree.
Where- so
Of course, we
where-
all disagree.
Right.
in the world of choral music, where do you see pop music fitting in? Like, what's its significance? Or, I mean, because arrangements are everywhere. I mean, arranging is like
Yeah.
in the bones of choral music.
Sure.
But pop music, I think.
I don't think of it as as a way of fitting in.
Yeah.
It's just a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a part of it. It's an important part.
It's woven in.
It's of music. It's an important part of choral music. Like, whether or not you think it's like quote unquote high art or low art
Yeah.
is your opinion, but pop music has a place
Yeah.
in choral music. That's, in my opinion, is equal
Well, yeah,
to the
and the ability
of
to
other
execute a really well-written pop chart, a cappella or otherwise, is pretty high. You know, to be able to execute that is takes a lot of skill, just like it does to sing Rudder's Requiem or any kind of like high art piece. That, you know, it's definitely woven into the fabric of the entire conversation. Yeah.
I think, to me, the open question about just pop music overall is like what we've seen in the past, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years. There's a lot more pop music that's being written and performed that doesn't translate super well to sheet music. And I think then the question becomes like, what does the future hold for that? Whether we're talking electronic music, hip hop, you know, these sort of soundscapey things where it's, you know, kind of one note or two.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And they're hugely popular albums, but like, how do we take that and transform that into choir music, but also band music and piano and all across the board?
Yeah.
I think that's the open question.
I mean, I'll listen to those iTunes Hot 100 or Billboard Hot 100.
Yeah,
right? Go through it and be like,
I can't use
what
any
of
of
these
this.
can be
Right.
choral at all?
Yeah, live there.
98 of the 100 songs. It's like, well, we can't, you know.
But I'm always looking for the person that can figure out how to take some of that and really turn it into it. I think
That's
I
true.
think if you can figure that out, if you can crack that code,
Yeah.
that's how
That's
you make
really
a lot of
great
money.
way- Yes, that's true.
I will say this to your comment earlier about the newsletter and how we're promoting pop tunes. You know, a lot of times it's like, I mean, some people might not know this, but we actively go through the Billboard Hot 100 and with a filter of, is this going to work in print on some level, you know, and then try our best to make recommendations. This could be a great choral chart, or this would be a great saxophone quintet chart, you know, or small ensemble, large ensemble. We're not just checking off the top 100 list and then just throwing it in the newsletter willy-nilly. There is
Right.
intentionality and thought. Will this work in print on some level? Thinking as broad as possible, obviously. Sometimes not as well as other songs, right? But you know, I've
I
been in
guess
this business 20 years. I know what's going to work in print.
yeah.
What won't, you know? And I'm not the only person involved, but yeah, there is intentionality behind that stuff too. And so
Well, I think the question is too: are they singing the song because of the song, or are they singing it because it's a really good arrangement?
that's a
And-
great
and
point.
that's something I
Yeah.
struggle with when trying to decide what to arrange. And the question's always like, you know,
Or how many
is-
hits on TikTok it's getting.
Well, it's like, is anyone going to sing this in 2 years when the song's not popular
Fair,
anymore? Like,
yeah.
I got to write a good chart, otherwise it's going to disappear.
Right, that's why I say you can take the ride if you want, you know, and it can be valuable, you know, but you got to kind of keep going and going and going. But you know, to Liz's point about being discovered, it's like, what else is in your catalog? Oh, you did a chart of this Katy Perry tune from 7 years ago. Oh, that's pretty cool. We can try that. You know, it's still relevant. You know, it's pretty cool. You know, my kids will have fun with that. Whatever. So,
And then you see it, and it's like, oh, this is the same kind of arrangement that I liked about that other one. Like, this is
Yeah.
the same kind of voice. This is the same kind of
Yeah.
thing that I'm looking for that I liked about that other one that I now see in this one too.
Amongst some of our most popular, well, at least it used to be, amongst some of our most popular ArrangeMe or S&P Press members, we find that like they have loyal fan base, and people come back over and over to buy the music from an arranger they discovered, and I don't see any reason why that can't translate into whatever sort of sales and of originals and all of that. So kind of go back to that question, but we do see that loyalty.
Indeed.
So, to wrap things up, you've given a lot of advice for composers primarily, but if you were talking to a director, let's say a new choral director that just graduated and they've got their first job, how would you describe the state of the publishing industry and self-publishing and all of these different sources they can go to find music?
Better than ever.
Yeah.
Saturated in a way, but we're trying to build the tools to make that easier to parse through. There is a wealth of material out there. We're not going to lie. Yeah. There's a bunch out there, but we want to give you the tools to be able to do that. And using ArrangeMe and things like that, hopefully will make it that much easier, because there's good music being arranged absolutely everywhere, all over.
Your question is great because it's from the choral director's perspective, and so I'm just thinking, if I'm a choral director and I have a need, I'm going to look around and say, who can help me meet this need? I've got friends, people in my community. Again, it goes back to relationships. Maybe I'll call my friend Luke here, and I need an arrangement of this thing to meet this need. Can you help me out? There's this thing called ArrangeMe. You can do it legally. So like being more proactive from a director's standpoint, instead of relying on just Google searches or searches on SMP to feed your repertoire. Being a little bit more proactive and intentional about the creative people that in your circle of influence.
So I think that just as we're talking about, all of these tools allowing composers and arrangers to really figure out, sort of get their own message out, I think that by sort of having this wealth of music really accessible at your fingertips. I mean, it really is. It's literally download now, right?
Yeah.
By having that out there, it allows choirs to really figure out who they are and really sort of put their best foot forward, really kind of decide that they're going to do some things that are new and exciting in ways that they haven't always been able to do, because it just hasn't been there. And I think it's just a really exciting way to, kind of decide, that you're going to be just a really unique voice in the choral space.
And it might be helpful too, because when you're starting out as a choir director, maybe you've got a unique situation where you've got a bunch of really strong tenors and like that would ever happen, right? Your tenors are amazing. Really strong group, or you've got a soloist that you could feature, and it's like, ArrangeMe, you can arrange anything for anything, right?
That's right.
You pick something, you can arrange it for whatever unique kind of thing, and something could fit your choir, and something could fit your current situation at that moment. So that's kind of an exciting thing.
Well, also, I used to be in a choir in San Francisco called Resound, so shout out to my group.
Yes.
But it's a community group, and we built concerts around themes. And a lot of these themes were really founded on some of these social consciousness and awareness issues. And by having all this music that is out there, there's more ways for us to explore that. And I mean, I'm even seeing that from more of the traditional publishers at this conference right now, but it's a lot of times the self-publishers who are leading the way on that. And it allows choirs like that to kind of explore those territories too, and become that choir this is who we are, this is what we do. I think that's a really cool space to be in.
Thanks to the three of you. This has been really fun. Let's do it again in 2 years.